Hey guys, it's Mathil here once again with another little video on a build I've been playing, or class and then build I've been playing on the last Epoch, Rogue BladeDancer. I did have a video up and ready to go yesterday, but pretty much as I started the day, I made a few pretty critical changes to the build that means I definitely needed to refilm and talk more about what I did. So to take you through the situation, I wanted to play a rogue and just see where it took me, see what happened, see how the class felt. It kind of steered me towards melee, I feel. It doesn't really start out too much as a bow character. You can, of course, force bow and then become like a marksman or something. So I ended up being just kind of like gravitating towards a BladeDancer, and I wanted to do this Flurry action, which is like kind of a little reeve lacerate double strike combo in PoE, and you know how I love something like that, so went with the flail action of that. But then I got kind of into Shadow Cascade, which is the big red circles that you see on the screen, and started to build more around that. Flurry goes really well throughout the campaign and leveling, and Rogue is probably actually one of the nicest, fastest, zoomiest sort of things to level and enjoy throughout the campaign. It starts to taper off a bit once you get into the empowered monoliths and you got to fix some defenses and all that sort of stuff. Because then you have to like make some compromises on some attack speed and damage and that sort of thing as well. But I digress. I did go more into Shadow Cascade because you need something that hits pretty hard, pretty big, and Shadow Cascade's a bit of an interesting one because it can scale off of shadows rather nicely. So one of the kind of weird but in the end pretty good things about Rogue is that it can spawn shadows, so like, you know, duplicates of yourself that just stand around basically waiting for you to use an attack, and then they'll mimic your attack. So you can spec more into shadows and then have more attacks from your big payload attacks, and in this case that is Shadow Cascade. So I was doing an alright version of my build up to like yesterday or so, and then I went fully into the more shadow version of it, which ends up being just a lot better. So by the end of like, or by the start of yesterday, I wasn't feeling terrific about my single target, and the clear on the build was really nice because, as you can see, when I dash there's a Shadow Cascade going off, and it clears really nicely. It's pretty snappy, it's pretty fast and effective, but I needed a bit more punch to the build, and that's when I put in the synchronized strike, which I think is on my third skill there, which creates a bunch more shadows, and then you can also build more into the combo with that and Shadow Cascade and do a lot more damage. So I had to build into both of those so that I could actually start critting and hitting for a lot harder. Prior to that, I was basically generating shadows through Smoke Bomb, which would just generate shadows a little bit here or there, and then you'd still have mimic of attacks, but I wasn't really building fully into that. Now that I've built a bit more into that, I'm still not fully, and I'll show you what I mean when I go over the character. Now that I've built more into that, I can have on-demand burst whenever I want it, and it feels really good. So now that I've made these changes, I'm actually really enjoying the rogue in my end game. Just, you know, grinding some blessings and empowered monos and tier 4 dungeons and stuff, trying to get some of that stuff done. Now that I've got the Shadow Cascade build more online, I think it's a pretty damn good build and feels like one of the nicest things you could probably do with a rogue, because there's a good bit of crisp gameplay, there's a bit of setup on your own part that then rewards you with good damage and good playstyle. So you start scaling lots of damage from your shadows that multiply, and then once the shadows unleash and do their own Shadow Cascade, it ends up doing, I don't know, it's hard to say, anywhere from like 20 to 100k crits is what I've seen. And you attack 4 times with your additional shadows all at once. But on top of that, you can spec into some on-kill shadows, so when we're actually killing with Shadow Cascade, we are sometimes leaving shadows behind, and then when you press Cascade again, even more attacks will happen. So it's not always about the setup, it can be pretty fluid, especially on larger clear when there's plenty of mobs to kill. You're just going to be unleashing lots of Shadow Cascades that all hit pretty goddamn hard. But you do have that on-demand burst, which feels really good. There's also something you can spec into that creates, that gives you life when you create shadows, and that basically sustains me for mapping, and means that I'm pretty much always topped off. So the synergy is pretty powerful with a lot of shadow stacking, shadow damage stuff, and I don't really even have a lot of the good stuff that you can get that would do even more damage, which, like I said, I'll show in just a sec. But the other thing is we are using a unique sword that gives a lot of crit multi per stack of whatever this ignite thing is. You can see on my bar that there's some stacking buff, and that basically takes care of all of your crit multi too. So there's some good items for the build, as well as just being a pretty powerful, nice synergistic melee build. And I've loved playing Rogue, to be honest, as a melee class, as a snappy sort of burst damage and I don't know, zoomy little playstyle thing. And yeah, this is just me dying to the tier 4 boss here, because that cold attack just kind of disappears and then hits you anyway, and then you just die to nothing. I just thought that was fun to include. So let me go ahead and show you what building this character look like. So here it is, level 95 Shroud Shrug emote with Rogue, because I had no idea what I was going to do with this character, this class. And yeah, it just came together to be basically Flurry, which is this thing here, and then Shadow Cascade, which is that, plus the Lunge Cascade, plus the Synchronized Strike Cascade. So as you can see, when we attack with this one, the big change to the build in the end was using more of this. When you attack with this, you create 4 of these shadows that then also replicate your attack, and you can scale those shadows to do a lot more damage. So the basis was to be Flurry. It works pretty well throughout the campaign and very fast, and feels pretty good, and it still does decent damage on its own, but it's not going to be large scale, you know, single target or clear. It's just a bit of an assist, and it also helps me get my mana back at this stage of the build. So to begin with, I was spec'd fully into Flurry, and I was doing the area side of things and full adrenaline. I was trying to make it do a lot of damage, but by this stage of the build, it just doesn't make sense for that to happen. So it became pure utility. So it's got some good speed, it's got some mana gain back, it's got some life gain back, it's got some more attack speed and crit, and helps stack up some of our armor shred and our buff from the sword, which is basically a staple for the build. I didn't get it on until like level 80 or so, because I didn't even have one. But once you get one of these on, you do gain stacks of Reen's Ire, which is a lot of extra crit multi. So once you get one of these, you pretty much don't have to do much crit multi scaling anywhere else, because this will take care of most of it. I only just then got a 1 LP one, like halfway through yesterday, and put 40 melee attack speed on it, and it felt really nice getting that extra attack speed. So I can recommend trying to get some attack speed on your weapons, because my other weapon doesn't have any attack speed either. Prior to, you know, this didn't have attack speed, and then this doesn't have attack speed. It's got crit multi instead. It's 2 exalted mods, so I kind of have to make use of it, but realistically I would much rather attack speed instead of the crit multi for that, just for the sake of the feel of the build. Otherwise, we are stacking armor shred, and you do have armor shred on melee hit. You got some armor shred there. You got a lot of idols that do various things, so either shred duration, or shred effect, and you can spec into some of this on the tree as well. So armor shred becomes very powerful for the character's damage scaling in the end. Got some there as well. Other than that, this is the build before I went into full shadow meme stuff, trying to get CDR up as much as possible, which is a bit unfortunate. Pretty much every build kind of wants to get maximum cooldown reduction, just to fix your like dash and running around and stuff. So you try and get as much movement speed as possible. You try and get as much cooldown reduction as possible, just so your gameplay feels nice with the dash. So that's what we're at. And I've got CDR on rings as well, and some life and fizz, likewise on that one there. And then gloves do, I don't know, some life and that armor mitigation for damage over time. Because once I hit empowered monoliths, I did have to definitely do some armor scaling, some mitigation with evasion, glancing, and armor scaling. So it doesn't look like much right now, but when we dash, we do put up shurikens, which gives us shuriken shield pretty much permanently. When I attack, I do gain evasion from this node over here. Stacks of perfection that help stack up with this. So we attack pretty quickly, we get 10 stacks of perfection, gives us a lot of armor evasion, and then it can drop off, but it comes back up pretty quick. You've then also got glancing blow, you've then also got leech and leech rate. So once I've put all of this together for empowered monoliths, I started to feel really good. When I was first breaking in, I was dying plenty and, we were kind of squishy, but putting all of that together, and then also this node here for generating life on shadow creation, that all ended up sustaining me lovely, and empowered monoliths started to feel pretty damn good. So that's what the tree looks like. We get, some mana on hit and stuff. So basically, my flurry is to accommodate the mana, because on synchronized strike, it costs a lot, and you only really do it as a big payload, and then generate some mana real quick. Because the way we spec into synchronized strike is to take the 2 extra shadows, the increased mana cost, and then also make the shadows jump inward for the increased mana cost. So it ends up costing a lot of mana. You could, in theory, make better sustain with just like more mana stacking if you want, and then make it more of a fixture of your build, but I decided to have it just as a every now and again thing. And then, like I said, you start getting lots of things that scale your shadows. So shadows created within 4 seconds deal increased damage. You can get lots of modifiers like this across the board, especially on your chest, which I don't have one of, but it's just a chest modifier that can have like fucking 200% shadow modifier damage, and the implicit can do stuff like that as well. So you can get some pretty crazy shadow damage scaling. But the Cascade itself goes over here as well. So when we have 4 exact shadows, it says very specifically you have to have 4 shadows, we deal another 100% more damage. So that's why this combo can be so good, because you're never generating a random amount of shadows like when you're doing on kill and generating some of them, which is from this node here, 40% chance on kill. Sometimes you'll have some random shadows, but when you've got 4 maximum, you can only ever go up to 4. Then 4 is where you're going to be at for your maximum damage, or when you just want your big payload burst, you generate your 4, blah, 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 huge damage. So if you do less than that, then make sure you do less, for example. Because synchronized strike by default only does 2. So if you want to do 2 shadows, not spec into that sort of stuff, then you spec into this for 2 points. Make sense? And then otherwise, yeah, it has a really high base crit, has good area, good scaling and stuff. Like I said, the shuriken tree basically there for pure utility. It just gives us some armor and some pierce for them so that they don't disappear, and shreds a bit of armor somewhere. This one. Shred fizz resistances and stuff. And other than that, that's the dash tree. It's mostly there for utility. It gives us the shadow cascade, and it generates our shurikens, and then that's about it. I did try the other attacks out as well. Dancing strikes I didn't really like too much. It's people do play it, people like it, but essentially you just hold right click and it just keeps doing this sort of stuff, and you can chop and change, but it feels a bit wonky. It feels a bit slow. It feels kind of like Cyclone for wrist damage, but worse, because you're like holding down harder and moving around more. I don't know. Didn't really love it, so I didn't really commit hard into it. And I think Umbral Blades and then Shadow Dagger tech is like the most common meta form of BladeDancers, and it does feel pretty good by all means, but I want it to be a pure melee, and I wanted to make my own little hipster thing. So with that, not sure there's anything else I need to point out. Tree, starts leveling real nice, very fast, very snappy, and in the end comes together to be a pretty nice build. At least I think anyway. Yeah, loved playing it. Will maybe even play it up to level 100 just because I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm keen to try another class and another build, but I'm having a lot of fun on this one, so we'll see. Maybe I'll still hit level 100. Yep. Probably my favorite character I've played so far. I do like the idea of Spellblade more and the whole visuals, but the playstyle of this has just come together to be real nice. So with that, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you guys next time.